On the morning of July 14th, 2019, the internet broke. I don't mean a server crashed or a website went down. This felt far more sinister, more fundamental. A fracture appeared in our digital world, a dark crack that started on a niche messaging app called Discord and spread with terrifying speed. It began with a single, unbelievable image. Then another. These weren't doctored photos or scenes from a horror movie. They were real. They showed the murder of a 17-year-old girl, and they were posted by her killer. Before the police could even tell her family, the images had gone viral. Before her loved ones could even start to process their loss, the world had seen her final, most vulnerable moments. The crime didn't stop with her death. It spread online, twisting into a spectacle of cruelty. Her name, which brought so much joy to her friends and family, became a hashtag, and under that hashtag, a war was fought. A war between those who wanted to honor her and those who wanted to desecrate her memory. This is the story of Bianca Devins, a young woman whose life was stolen and whose death became a brutal case study in the dark potential of the internet. It's a story about how a deeply personal tragedy was twisted into public trauma and how a family's grief was compounded by a relentless campaign of digital terror. This isn't just a story of a murder. It's the story of what came after. Welcome to Secrets in the Shadows, where forgotten voices echo and the truth refuses to stay buried. If you believe that every story deserves to be heard and every soul deserves justice, you're in the right place. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions don't just grow this channel. They remind us why we do this. They give life to the silenced and strength to keep going. So if this kind of storytelling matters to you, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and join our community of truth seekers. Because together, we can bring light to even the darkest of stories. We're always told that the internet is forever. We usually think of that in terms of embarrassing photos from college or old cringy social media posts. But what happens when forever isn't an old memory, but a graphic picture of a murder? What happens when a crime isn't just committed, but broadcast to the world? For Bianca Devins' family, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was their waking nightmare. For weeks, then months, and even years after her death, strangers online relentlessly targeted them. Hiding behind anonymous profiles, these people would send them the very images of Bianca's death, sometimes edited into cruel memes. The pictures came with messages that blamed her for her own murder. A behavioral scientist would later call this a campaign of psychological terrorism. It was a second assault, a digital crime layered on top of the physical one, proving in the most horrifying way that in our modern world, a murder can have an afterlife. To really grasp the scale of this tragedy, you first have to know who Bianca Devins was. Before she was a hashtag, before her image became a symbol of online horror, she was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Born on October 2nd, 2001, in Utica, New York, Bianca Michelle Devins was a vibrant and creative soul. Her family described her as a talented artist whose smile could light up any room. She had just graduated from high school in June 2019 and was excited to attend community college in the fall. She wanted to study psychology with the goal of helping other young people navigate the same kinds of struggles she had faced. Bianca's life wasn't always easy. She grappled with her mental health from a young age, dealing with anxiety, depression, and eventually being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and PTSD. Her mom, Kim, remembered Bianca seeing a therapist for the first time at age 9 for separation anxiety. By 13, the signs of depression were more serious. Like a lot of teenagers facing similar battles, Bianca found a community and an escape online. Social media was a huge part of her life. It was a space where she felt she could be whoever she wanted, a place to shed the weight of her real-world struggles. Online, she built a persona, sometimes described as an e-girl, a term for a specific internet aesthetic. She was active on multiple platforms, like Instagram and Discord, connecting with a wide circle of friends and followers. Her online friends remember her as being exceptionally patient and kind, always ready to listen to others who were struggling, even when she was having a hard time herself. This accessibility, however, attracted a certain kind of male follower, sometimes called orbiters. Men who would follow an attractive online personality, floating around their digital world without ever getting truly close. It was a common dynamic in the online spaces she used, one that seemed harmless on the surface, but held a danger that nobody could have seen coming. It was through this online world, on Instagram, that Bianca met 21-year-old Brandon Andrew Clark in May of 2019, just 2 months before she died. To her family, who met him in person, he seemed polite and nice. To her online friends, he didn't really stand out. Police and family would later say they were just friends, though it became clear they both saw the relationship very differently. While Bianca and her sister saw him as a close friend, Clark developed a possessive obsession. This disconnect, a common and often dangerous feature of online relationships, would ultimately become the fault line on which Bianca's life would tragically break. The last hours of Bianca's life started with something completely normal, something exciting for a 17-year-old who had just graduated, a concert in New York City. On July 13th, 2019, Bianca, Brandon Clark, and another friend, Alex, made the trip to see the singer Nicole Dollanganger. Her mom, Kim, remembers how excited Bianca was. It was her first real adult concert, a rite of passage. Bianca texted her mom after the show to say she was on her way home. It was the last time they'd ever speak. On the drive back to Utica, the mood soured. An argument broke out between Bianca and Clark. By most accounts, it was about jealousy. Clark had apparently seen Bianca kiss their mutual friend, Alex, at the concert. For Clark, whose interest in Bianca had already tipped into a dangerous obsession, this was an unbearable offense. The argument escalated. Trapped in the car, Clark's possessive rage boiled over. He attacked Bianca with a long knife he had hidden in the vehicle. The assault was brutal and fast. He slit her throat, an act of violence so extreme that her head was nearly severed. But for Brandon Clark, murder wasn't the end. It was just the opening act of a performance he had carefully staged for an online audience. After killing Bianca in the early morning hours of July 14th, he didn't run. He started documenting his crime. He took graphic photos of her body. He filmed a chilling video of the immediate aftermath, where he reportedly screamed at her lifeless body, "Bianca, why did you make me do this?" A classic attempt to blame the victim. He even spray painted, "May you never forget me," on the ground, a clear sign of his thirst for fame. This wasn't a crime of passion, not in the usual sense. It was a premeditated spectacle. The knife was there for a reason. His actions were deliberate and disturbingly performative. He then took his horror show online, First, he logged onto Discord, the chat platform popular with gamers, where he and Bianca were both active. In a private server, he uploaded a picture of Bianca's body with the caption, "Sorry fuckers, you're going to have to find somebody else to orbit." That word, orbit, was a direct and chilling reference to the online culture they were part of, a final possessive claim over her, even in death. From Discord, he moved to Instagram. He posted a series of stories hinting at the crime, including a picture from the movie Fight Club and a photo of a dark road with the caption, "Here comes hell. It's redemption, right?" Then he uploaded the most horrific image of all directly to his Instagram story, where content disappears after 24 hours. The photo showed Bianca's body under a tarp. The caption read, "I'm sorry, Bianca." The first people to see these images were other users on Discord, including some of Bianca's friends. At first, they didn't believe it. Posting shocking content, or gore, wasn't completely unheard of in some corners of the internet, often just for shock value. But as the morning went on, the awful reality began to sink in. Something was terribly wrong. People who saw the posts frantically started trying to alert the police. Calls flooded the Utica Police Department from all over the country, all reporting the same horrific images. At around 7:20 a.m., while a local road race was happening just a few blocks away, the most chilling call of all came into 911. It was Brandon Clark himself. In a calm, steady voice, he identified himself and his victim. "My name is Brandon," he told the dispatcher. "The victim is Bianca Michelle Devins. I'm not going to stay on the phone for long because I still need to do the suicide part of the murder-suicide." When police got to the dead-end road Clark had told them to go to, they found a surreal and horrifying scene. Clark was lying on the ground across a green tarp. As the first officer got closer, Clark started stabbing himself in the neck. Even then, his performance wasn't over. He lay across Bianca's concealed body and started taking selfies, which he also posted online. Police managed to disarm him and take him into custody. Underneath the tarp, they found Bianca's body. The physical crime was over. Brandon Clark was under arrest. But the digital crime, the one he had so carefully planned, was just beginning its devastating journey across the internet, and it was moving way faster than the police could ever hope to keep up. While police were trying to secure the crime scene and tell Bianca's family in person, the digital world had already spun out of their control. The images Brandon Clark uploaded didn't stay in the dark corners of Discord. They exploded into the mainstream. Clark's final act was to make sure his crime got as much attention as possible. He used hashtags associated with Bianca, and as his story went viral, her name and image were suddenly everywhere. The horror of finding out a loved one has died was made so much worse by how the news was delivered. Before police could get to Kim Devins, the family had already started receiving messages. Strangers, seeing the photos online, sent them directly to Bianca's family members, including her younger sister, Olivia. One of the first things Kim saw wasn't the face of a police officer, but a notification on her phone. Someone had texted her family the horrific picture of her daughter's body. The official death notification from police became a terrible confirmation of the digital nightmare that had already started. I just kept screaming, "It's not her, it's not her, it's not my baby," Kim later recalled. The images spread like a virus across every major social media platform: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. Clark's own Instagram account saw a huge surge in followers in the hours after the murder. Bianca's accounts also blew up, her follower count jumping from a few thousand to over 160,000 within weeks, an audience that had gathered to see a tragedy. The platform's moderation systems were completely overwhelmed. Instagram, especially, came under fire. When users first reported the images, many got automated replies saying the photos didn't violate community guidelines. It was a sickening, algorithmic failure that let the content stay up for hours, sometimes days. For every one image the platforms took down, dozens more would pop up. It was a grotesque game of digital whack-a-mole, but something else was happening, something even darker than the platform's failure to control the images. A culture of cruelty started to form around Bianca's murder. Trolls and anonymous users from places like 4chan and incel forums, involuntary celibates, known for their hatred of women, began to celebrate what Clark did. They called him a legend and a hero, claiming he did the world a favor. They turned the graphic images of Bianca's death into memes, making her murder a joke. Some people even tried to profit from the tragedy, creating accounts that promised to send the unedited photos in exchange for followers. The hashtags with Bianca's name became a digital battlefield. On one side were the trolls and gawkers spreading hate and graphic content. On the other, a grassroots counter-movement rose up. Bianca's friends and supporters, along with horrified strangers, began what they called tag cleaning. They flooded the hashtags with positive images, pictures of Bianca when she was alive, fan art, pink clouds, bunnies, and ribbons. The goal was to bury the horrific death photos in the search results, to take back her digital legacy from the ghouls who wanted to define her by her final moments. It was an act of digital defiance, a community effort to restore some dignity where the platforms themselves had failed. For Bianca's family, though, there was no escape. The online harassment was relentless and deeply personal. They were targeted directly. Trolls sent the photos to her mother, her grandfather, and her sister Olivia, who eventually had to leave social media because of the constant risk of seeing the images of her sister's death. The messages that came with the photos were just as vile, with people telling the grieving family that Bianca deserved to die. "It's horrifying," Kim Devins said. "It's traumatizing to see people saying that. This is my baby, that she deserved such a cruel end to her life." Behavioral scientist Stephen Cremando analyzed the storm of abuse aimed at the family and called it a deliberate campaign of psychological terrorism. He explained that the trolls were meeting a very twisted need by continuing to share the images. It wasn't just about spreading gore, it was about making the family suffering last. "It actually furthers the physical crime," he stated, noting that the message was, "You don't know when it's going to come, but you know it's going to happen again." The goal was to terrorize, to make sure the trauma of the murder would never fade. Experts have studied the psychological impact of seeing graphic content online over and over, linking it to anxiety, depression, and symptoms that look a lot like PTSD. For Bianca's family, this wasn't just secondhand trauma. It was a direct, ongoing assault, a digital extension of the violence that took their daughter's life. While the digital firestorm raged, the legal process moved forward in the real world. Brandon Clark survived his self-inflicted wounds and was charged with second-degree murder. On July 29, 2019, he pleaded not guilty. The prosecution, was clear on how they saw him. Prosecutor Sarah DeMellier described him as an evil person that wanted to murder someone. Clark's behavior in jail only backed this up. He was found with a shiv made from a sharpened toothbrush, which got him another charge. Around this time, he also wrote a letter to a friend. He wasn't expressing remorse. He was reportedly bragging about the killing and explaining that his motive was that he couldn't handle the thought of her walking out of his life. These weren't the actions of a man filled with regret, but of someone fixated on his own story and fame. As his trial date got closer, Clark's legal team considered an extreme emotional disturbance defense, a strategy that could have potentially reduced the charge from murder to manslaughter. His original lawyer said he repeatedly advised Clark to go to trial with this defense, but Clark seemed more concerned with controlling his own narrative than fighting the charge. Then, in a surprising turn, on February 10th, 2020, right before his trial was supposed to start, Brandon Clark changed his plea to guilty. In court, he gave a short apology, saying that Bianca didn't deserve what happened to her. He accepted a plea deal for the maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. But the road to sentencing wasn't straight. It was first delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then, in June 2020, Clark tried to withdraw his guilty plea, claiming his lawyer had failed him. Many, including Bianca's family, saw this as just another tactic to drag out their suffering and stay in the spotlight. A judge denied his request, ruling that his guilty plea was valid and that he had knowingly admitted his guilt. Finally, on March 16, 2021, nearly 2 years after he murdered Bianca, Brandon Clark was sentenced. The courtroom was filled with about 40 of Bianca's friends and family. They delivered powerful and heartbreaking victim impact statements. Her sister talked about her nightmares and her new fear of meeting people. Her mother spoke of the haunting images that would never leave her. Bianca's grandfather, Frank, spoke about the person the world had lost, the girl he used to sing Puff the Magic Dragon to. Clark also spoke at his sentencing, apologizing to the family and mentioning his own mental health issues. But for Bianca's family, his words rang hollow. His actions, during the murder and after, spoke much louder. The judge sentenced him to the maximum allowed, 25 years to life in prison. Justice, in the traditional legal sense, had been served. Clark was behind bars. But for the Devins family, this was only one part of the battle. The man who killed their daughter was in prison, but the digital weapon he had unleashed was still out there, still inflicting pain. The fight for justice in Bianca's case didn't end with a prison sentence. It turned into a fight to change the internet itself. If this story has affected you, or if you believe social media platforms need to do more to protect users from violent content, think about supporting organizations that advocate for online safety. Look into the laws in your own area about spreading graphic content. The conversation about platform responsibility is still going on, and public awareness is a huge part of making real change happen. Bianca Devins' murder and the horrific digital fallout served as a brutal wake-up call. It exposed a giant hole in our interconnected world, showing just how easily social media could be weaponized to not just spread hate, but to actively terrorize victims' families. The case forced a difficult and long overdue conversation about the responsibilities of a multi-billion-dollar industry that had, for too long, hidden behind the excuse of being a neutral platform. In the wake of her daughter's death, Kim Devins turned her unimaginable grief into powerful advocacy. She became a relentless voice for change, determined to make sure no other family would have to go through the second crime that hers did. Her focus was clear: hold social media companies accountable and push for laws to prevent the viral spread of violent images. She talked about the frustrating, bureaucratic nightmare of trying to get the photos of her daughter taken down, often getting automated messages that the content didn't go against their guidelines. She pointed out the shocking lack of a crisis response system, a way for people in extreme situations to talk to a real person at these tech giants. Her advocacy, along with lawmakers like Congressman Anthony Brindisi, led to Bianca's Law. The goal was to pass laws that would make spreading graphic crime scene images illegal and force social media companies to act fast to remove them. In late 2022, a version of Bianca's Law was signed in New York State by Governor Kathy Hochul. This law created the crime of unlawful dissemination of personal images, specifically targeting the kind of content that haunted the Devins family. While it was a major victory, Kim Devins has been clear that this is only the first step. For the law to really work, she argues, it needs to be federal, because the internet doesn't stop at state lines. Beyond the legal battles, Bianca's legacy is also one of community and love. Her family started the Bianca Michelle Devins Memorial Scholarship Fund to support students going into psychology, letting Bianca's dream of helping others live on. They've held events like the Big Gala to celebrate her life and her art, focusing on the vibrant person she was, not the victim she became. The Pink for Bianca movement, which started as a grassroots effort to fight the hateful images, continues to be a symbol of love and digital kindness. The case of Bianca Devins is still a watershed moment in the history of the internet. It's a permanent, tragic reminder of the dark side of online culture, from obsession and jealousy to the shocking cruelty of online mobs. It highlights the very real psychological harm that digital content can cause, blurring the lines between what we see online and real-world trauma. Researchers are still studying the effects of viewing such graphic content, confirming its links to PTSD, anxiety, and other mental health crises, especially among young people. The story of Bianca Devins is a tragedy with two parts that are forever tangled together. First, there's the deeply personal story of a young woman's life, cut short by calculated, possessive violence. A 17-year-old artist with a bright smile and a future full of promise, stolen from a family that adored her. Second, there is the uniquely modern horror of what came next, the deliberate choice to turn her murder into a viral spectacle. Her death became content. Her pain became entertainment for some and a weapon for others. Her family's grief wasn't allowed to be private. It was invaded, mocked, and amplified by an army of anonymous trolls. Brandon Clark wanted to be remembered. He spray-painted, "May you never forget me," at the crime scene, and in a twisted way, the internet gave him his wish. But it didn't forget Bianca either. The efforts of her friends, her family, and countless strangers to flood the internet with love, with pink clouds, and beautiful art showed a different side of online culture. It was an act of collective reclamation, a refusal to let hatred have the last word. The case leaves us with unsettling but vital questions. What is the responsibility of the platforms that host our digital lives. Where is the line between an open forum and an accessory to psychological terror? Bianca's Law is one answer, a legal framework born from tragedy. But laws alone can't fix the underlying problems of misogyny, cruelty, and the thirst for fame that fester in the dark corners of the web. Bianca's mother said that she now has to be her daughter's voice. It's a voice that speaks not only of the pain of loss, but of the urgent need for a kinder, safer, and more accountable digital world. The hashtag that was meant to be a monument to a killer's ego has been transformed through love and tireless work into a symbol of a fight that is far from over. It's a fight for memory, for dignity, and for a future where no other family has to watch their deepest tragedy become the world's viral nightmare. Rest in peace, Bianca. Your light, your art, and your kindness touch so many. You deserved a full, beautiful life. We will never forget you. Thank you for watching Secrets in the Shadows. If Bianca's story impacted you, if it made you feel, question, or even cry, we ask you to subscribe, like, and share this video. These stories are more than headlines. They are lives, and every view helps ensure they're never forgotten. Your support is what keeps us digging deeper, telling the untold, and fighting for voices that were once lost. Stay safe, stay compassionate, and never stop seeking the truth.